Are you the quantum mechanics?
Yes, we're the Quantum Mechanics. We're the paranormal podcast for the believers, the doubters, and everyone in between. It might be a bit noisy, this episode, because we've got a couple of special extra guests, as we often do in our studio.
8 extra legs.
Yes, we've got the doors open. Both our dogs are here. And normally they're okay. They're a little bit, what's the word, zoomy.
They're very zoomy.
They're very zoomy.
The spring weather has brought it out in them.
Yep, so if you hear panting, knocking of furniture, barking, it's just the dogs.
I was going to say, that's just me.
Yeah, we're going to work around it. But I hope you're all well out there.
I am very well. It's that time of the year when you start... do you feel like you're waking up a little bit and stretching? I'm going to try and insert a segue here. The other end of the year, where it gets darker,
Yeah.
and towards Halloween, loads of people do Halloween mazes, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's something slightly paranormal about a maze or a labyrinth. And this topic was suggested by one of our patrons, Mistress Ruthie. And I didn't know where it was going to go. And I've done a deep dive into labyrinths. And it turns out they're weirder than you think.
Oh, okay. I'm looking forward to that. I know, does it count as a labyrinth? I always think of the maze in The Shining.
Yeah, I think that probably does. Because it's that disorientating effect.
I guess Harry Potter as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And that David Bowie movie.
Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish he'd acted a bit more.
Yeah, what, in the movie
yes.
or generally?
No, in the movie. I think he would have been... Do you know what he'd have been great in is Death in Paradise? There's the one where they always have celebrity special guests.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yes, that's the... Yes, okay. I don't think I've ever seen it. Is that bad of me?
It's quite good. It's quite a good show. I think he would have played a wayward fisherman who'd lost his best mate and he was asking them to investigate.
I'm the wayward fisherman. I lost my best mate. Maybe we should get back to Labyrinths.
All right, Labyrinths. So, they are often seen as like the gateway between the worlds, the physical, spiritual, human and divine. That's why you see them quite often depicted in religious iconography or
Right.
at least esoteric iconography. And it's like if you put mirrors in there, you've got this complexity, sort of cosmic order, cosmic chaos.
Yeah.
We mentioned, somebody did point out that I had said Minotaur when I should have said Centaur.
Yes.
The other day. I do mean Minotaur in this point. So he was kept in a maze at Knossos, and it wasn't just a jail, it was like a rift to Hades. He was the beast as the gatekeeper to this other world.
I have to say, because we did the thing on caves the other week, and there was that cave that was the link to the underworld and Hades.
Yeah.
The underworld's a pretty leaky place. There's lots of ways in, isn't there?
There is, yes. Well, yeah, I can think of another one, but don't go to Didcot. They're also used, obviously we've spoken about the Minotaur there, but they are used to trap spirits or entities. More generally, they're built to confuse and contain ghost demons. They get lost at every turn. Have you come across the Winchester Mystery House?
No.
Which is the poster child of it. So Sarah Winchester, who was heir to the fortune of the people who make the Winchester guns.
Oh, yeah.
It's very well documented, this. She was told that to escape the vengeful spirits of the rifle victims, she must keep building her house. And she put all of these weird sort of staircases that go nowhere, doors that go nowhere, to confuse the spirits.
That's a hell of a pressure to get a mortgage, isn't it? Why do you want a mortgage? Well, it's my spiritual redemption. I've got to keep building.
Well,
yeah.
She really did believe it. She
Really?
was, yeah. And there was building work happened all the time in the house. She genuinely believed, and she was told that if she stopped building, the spirits would get her. But that is a real good example of how it was sort of perceived in the real world. And then if you look back at I found a medieval labyrinth in Chartres in the 11th century when it was built. There's a church there which has a devil trap in it. Yeah. So sin could not navigate out of the labyrinth.
Right.
It's a way of representing something which we can't easily describe with words, I think.
Because you kind of think, well, just stick it in a cell. But is there something about the labyrinth keeps it occupied and it can't get out, rather than being in a cell it's not occupied. Is that part of it? I don't know.
Yeah, it's also there. It's literally to confuse, and we'll come on to the medical reasons. The reason I'm kind of cantering through this is because I've got some delicious stories to tell you.
Okay.
But I wanted to sort of set it up first so you kind of, because otherwise it just turns into just stories, and the stories are good. But I thought it was kind of fascinating, like, because I see them everywhere. Funnily enough, if you... anybody that lives in London, the day that I started researching this, if you go to the Shepherd's Bush train station, they've shut the escalator, and when you get to the bottom of the manual stairs, as I guess you would call them...
The stairs.
Or the stairs. There's 71 of them, which is quite a lot, I think. But there's a picture of a labyrinth at the bottom. Yeah. And I thought, oh, how strange. And I took a photograph of it to try and find out where it comes from. And my AI was completely useless. I don't know where it's come from. So I will find out. But just to go back to my script, ancient Celts tied labyrinths to earth energies. So there's a place in Cornwall's Rocky Valley, which was known as a ritual site. And there are stone mazes there, and lots of people, they sort of say they can feel energies and vibrations. And then, of course, the other reason that they're there is just this metaphor for life's most strange mysteries. I'm not going to dwell on the fact, but a lot of people do sort of say that there are symbolism of alien technologies in mazes. I find no evidence for that. That is just something that people like to say. But the science behind this, and I had no idea about this, labyrinths screw with your vestibular system, which is your inner ear balance, and your body position sense. And I found a study in Aviation, Space and Environmental Medicine in 2006 on motion sickness, and it links this vestibular overload to dizziness and unease. Even twisting paths can overload your brain's map making. And
so is that visual effect?
It is a visual effect, yeah. There's a 2018 Nature Reviews neuroscience piece on spatial cognition, and it does give a fleeting mention of mazes and labyrinths as something that can cause this. Wow. And I've got a brilliant story coming up later about a natural maze which may cause this particular sensation, which is why it's associated with so many local legends. The other thing to note about mazes, and this hadn't occurred to me either, is the acoustic weirdness. So echoes and dead zones in labyrinths mess with your sound perception. Again, I was going into studies on this. 2019 Journal of the Acoustical Society of America studied enclosed spaces, and it shows how irregular walls create standing waves or muffling. So they give this impression that you get that Oz effect. So you suddenly walk into a place where everything is still and silent. That is part of what happens in a maze. Now,
I always love that when snow settles as well.
The silence of it.
Just how the sound of somewhere you're familiar with is completely different. I love that, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to get this in your average Halloween maze, I don't think, or in one of your hedge mazes, particularly because they tend to be a bit lower. But I'm talking like the tall ones that are made of, well, they could be made of hedges, but largely they'd be rock or something like that.
Right.
This idea that it changes your perception was also borne out, and there's a 2011 psychological science study on expectation shows how context shapes perception. So this is making the point that if you are in a strange environment like a labyrinth and you don't know what to expect around the corner, and your brain's mapping system is out of kilter, and your hearing has gone a bit weird, your brain will start interpreting things in a much more, in inverted commas, spooky way. It'll make you feel like
uncomfortable.
There's something like not real going on.
Right. To the point of hallucination, or not that?
They stop short of saying hallucination, but it's not really hallucination. It's more that your perception is off. So
you wig yourself out, basically.
Yeah. Your distances become confused, and your direction certainly becomes confused. Yeah. And of course, that is sort of the joy of it. It's a little bit like getting lost in a maze. Somebody, one of the scientists was quoted as saying it's a bit like when you're a child and you spin around to get dizzy.
Yeah.
The joy of that sort of losing and then regaining normality is something that happens when you mess within a maze. And I used to love going into the middle of mazes. There was a children's TV program which had a maze in it. I think it was called, was it Tom's Midnight Garden, something like that? I
vaguely remember that,
Yeah, and there's a sundial in the middle of a maze.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was always on at my parents to take me to a maze, and I guess they couldn't ever see the fascination of it. And of course, when you do one now, it's just like, oh, right, okay, I've come in. And the last time I went in was with one of my friend's children because they were excited about it. And immediately when we went in, I lacked all the excitement because it's just like, oh, right, okay, we get to the middle and then we have to get back out again.
I did one of those wall of mirror mazes, probably the last one I did. And actually, as an adult, I found it really uncomfortable. I really hated it. Because you just think,
really?
I was just like, I'm just going to walk into something. It just really disorientated me. I know that's the point, but yeah, it wasn't in a good way.
The closest I can come to with that, the very, very first computer game I ever had was something called 3D Monster Maze.
Right.
And it was well known for being like one of the most advanced games on the Spectrum, the ZX81. Sinclair ZX81, and basically you have to navigate around a maze and there's a Tyrannosaurus Rex chasing you. Right. And the terror of a Tyrannosaurus Rex made up of like lines from the ASCII keyboard was actually quite terrifying, and I can't even explain why.
I don't know much about VR headset games. There must be maze-based ones of those, because that'd be cool, wouldn't it? That one, especially that idea of creatures chasing you around a maze would work really well in a headset, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So what I've done is compile a set of interesting and spooky stories from mazes around the world. They tend to be related by people's sightings.
Yeah.
And they can feel just kind of like hearsay. So what I've done is turn them into a little bit of a history lesson in each one as well. The first one I want to talk about is the maze at Cawdor Castle in Scotland.
Right.
I didn't even know it had a maze. In the shadow of Cawdor Castle's ancient turrets, where mist clings to the highlands like a shroud, there once stood a tangled hedge maze, its yew walls gnarled and wild as if clawing at the sky. By the 1880s, it was Angus MacBride's domain, a wiry gardener with eyes like chipped slate, who'd shuffle through its paths muttering about voices in the leaves. He claimed the rustling wasn't just wind. He said it was a chorus, low and mournful, and he told tales of old battles and broken oaths. He really did believe that he was hearing an echo of the past in there. The locals called him daft, but they'd seen him pause mid-step, head cocked, as if answering an unseen voice. One October evening, fog rolled in as thick as porridge, swallowing the castle grounds. Angus was last glimpsed pruning the maze's outer edge, his shears glinting in the dim lantern light. Then, suddenly nothing. No cry, no clatter of tools, just silence heavier than the mist. Searchers found his lantern still burning on the maze's mouth, its flames guttering like a dying breath, but Angus was gone. Days later, a tweed-clad traveller, lost in the maze's twisting heart, froze as he heard the snip-snip of shears. Peering through the gloom, he saw Angus, or something wearing his shape, bent over the hedge, trimming with precision. "Oi, mate!" he shouted, but the figure straightened, turned, and melted into a swirl of mist, leaving only the scent of damp earth and a single pruned twig on the path.
Wow.
The maze grew wild after that, its paths choking shut as if hiding a secret. Workers dismantled it years after, and they swore that they heard shears clicking in the stillness, and one fled after glimpsing a shadow in plaid flit past, a shadow with no face to match. Some say Angus never left. He's part of the maze now, tending it for an eternity, his whispers blending with the wind that howls through Cawdor's cursed stones.
Wow.
That is the legend, and I quite like it as well.
Yeah.
I like the sort of phantom snip that goes there.
Yeah. Brilliant.
We're going to go to Ontario now, and the corn maze of Black Creek.
That's a perfect name, isn't it?
In the flat, lonely fields of Black Creek, where the sky presses down like a lid. Don't know why I wrote that. Does though.
I like it.
The Johnstone family's corn maze was fleeting autumn joy, until 1999 when it became something else.
When you say corn maze, is that like corn that you grow? It's just that they cut it into a
That's
maze.
right.
Wow,
Yeah. Quite a lot of that's. I think a lot of those Halloween mazes are like that.
I like that. Yeah. You can have a pumpkin head thing in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That last October, the corn stood tall and brittle, rattling like dry bones under a harvest moon. 5 teens, boisterous, half drunk on cider, stumbled in after dark, laughing as they split up to race its paths. Then came the singing. A child's voice, thin and sweet, threading through the stalks with a lullaby no one recognised. Over and over, the needle stuck in a groove. Sleep, my dove, the stars are cold. They chased it, boots crunching, breath fogging, until they hit a dead end, a flattened circle where the corn lay crushed, as if something small had danced there. The singing grew louder, circling them, but no child appeared. A gust tore through, colder than the night warranted, slamming one boy into the stalks. He scrambled up, swearing he'd felt tiny hands shove him. Then silence. Sudden as a snapped string, there was nothing. The next morning, Old Man Johnston found a shoe in that circle. A girl's Mary Jane, cracked and grey, its leather reeking of decades past, not days. The teens never returned and the maze closed, the farm's windows dark by Christmas. Years later, a worker who'd strung the maze's twine confessed that he'd heard the song before, faint under the wind, and once woke to find the corn dolls, crudely knotted and eyeless, lined up outside his shed. Now, when frost coats Black Creek's fields, some swear they hear a child's tune drift from where the maze once stood, a lullaby for no one, tethered to a shoe that shouldn't be.
Wow.
It's quite good, that one.
It is good, that one. I wanted to say, if anyone, you probably can't hear this, Ben, but if anyone can hear snoring, it's not because of Ben's story, it's just the dog is snoring very loudly.
It's a critique.
Yeah. They're Children of the Corn, basically. All
yes,
that.
That is exactly that.
Yeah.
That was a terrifying film.
Yes, that was terrifying.
And in a way, Labyrinth-like, although it's a solid.
And it's reminding me the kind of singing thing. I'm sure it was used in before A Nightmare on Elm Street, but I guess it's most. I remember that kind of child singing most in A Nightmare on Elm Street. As that vibe to it as well.
It is. Well, it became a trope for any time you get a low-budget British horror movie. There's always some sort of child's singing over the top of it, isn't there? There's like, I don't know, black and white, discombobulated walking, and a child singing something like, a lullaby. And that's like, we're in spooky land, there's a ghost child, got it.
And there's no backstory then to that ghost?
No, not really. No. It is just, again, a local legend.
I think,
that I found.
Although it's funny, those kind of stories, I think, are almost scarier without backstory. Because you can, you're going, is that something demonic? Is it the spirit of something? If you go down the capital P paranormal route, it feels weirder. Is it a trickster spirit? Rather than if there is a backstory, I don't know, it kind of softens the spookiness for me if there's a backstory in a way.
Yeah, I would venture that one is probably a legend put together by the said drunken cider swilling youths.
You think they got something to do with it?
I think they might have.
Yeah.
But I do like that the fact that there could be a child trapped in a maze speaks to lots of different elements of our fear, I suppose.
Also that corn doll thing, and I was thinking...
corn dolls are weird anyway.
Well, I was thinking around here, you often get the... For harvest time, you often get the scarecrows made out of corn and various bits. Have you seen them when you drive around?
Yes.
There's some funny ones, and everyone goes to town to try and make the best one. But there is something fundamentally spooky about the whole thing.
Yes, although I will say that spookiness element is completely destroyed. Anyone who's ever watched This Country, the very first episode, the Scarecrow Festival.
Of course they had that.
Yes. And I grew up in the Cotswolds. There really are Scarecrow festivals.
Right.
That they sort of happen at those that sort of September, October period when there's lots of beer festivals, harvest festivals. You get those Scarecrow festivals.
Yeah, people take it very seriously.
Very, very seriously. Yeah. Speaking of taking it seriously, we're off to Italy.
Okay.
Villa Altieri's stone labyrinth, crouched in the overgrown gardens like a forgotten beast, its moss-slick walls older than the crumbling state above. By the 1920s, it was a relic, its paths half collapsed, but it drew a young noble, Cesare di Loro. On a moonless night in 1924, he'd been drinking grappa and laughing off tales of the Altieri curse when he staggered into the maze with a lantern, daring its shadows. Hours later, he burst into the villa's salon, wide-eyed, his hands trembling as he scribbled Latin phrases on a napkin. Carver Felis, beware the cat.
I thought it was going to be beware the grappa, because that'll do it to you.
We will. I'm not very good at Latin, but I'm going to try it. Seguis muse, nothing to do with the cat. Apparently my blood. I suppose that means, exsanguination. Sanguis muse, yes, my blood. Okay. Beware the cat, my blood. He swore the walls had spoken, their voices dry as dust, hissing through the cracks like a serpent's breath. Cesare vanished 3 nights later, his room empty save for a sketch, the labyrinth's spiral, crude-like cat drawn in its heart, its eyes like 2 jagged voids. Decades on, in the 1980s, a grizzled caretaker named Marco took up watch over the ruins. He'd linger near the maze at dusk, pipe smoke curling, until he started hearing it too. Whispers, not in Italian, but older, curling around his ears like the smoke, with the damp, musky reek of wet fur. Once he glimpsed a shape, low, sinuous, too big for a stray, slipping between the stones, its eyes glinting like coins before it was gone. He quit after finding claw marks gouged into the maze's central slab, deep and fresh, though no beast roamed the grounds. The villa's fallen now to weeds and silence, but those who dare the labyrinth's remnants speak of a weight in the air, a murmur beneath the wind, and sometimes, in the stillness, the faint pad of unseen paws stalking just out of sight. A ghost cat in a maze.
Nice. You love a ghost animal.
I do love a ghost animal, yeah.
And it sounds like it was, wasn't like a big cat. It was just a normal cat in that sense.
I think the implication is it's a larger paranormally cat.
Okay.
I don't think it's supposed to be an elemental spirit or like a shuck or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think it is supposed to just be a cat that haunts the place, but it's a bit more fearsome than you would like. But again, I think it's a lovely local legend. That one is very much the sort of Sherlock Holmesy.
Yes, it's very that.
The beast on the moors, the beast in the maze. It makes it like, what is a maze if there's no legend? Then what is the point of diving in?
It's more to do with the grappa than the gruesome, isn't it?
I don't know why
people drink grappa.
Why? Yes, exactly. It just gives me heartburn.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's horrible, isn't it?
I'm sure it's like anything. I know I used to feel a bit like that about sake until I lived in Japan, and you have nice stuff. So I'm sure there's some wonderful grappa out there, but I've not come across it.
You know, when we went out for curry for my birthday, there was a grappa coffee on offer. No, don't think so.
No, well, at least it dilutes it.
Let's hear about the faceless watcher of Boughton House in England. Boughton House's maze, carved from yew in the 1980s, gleamed fresh and green against the estate's weathered stone, a new toy on old bones. But in November 1987, groundskeeper Tom Harrow met something that didn't belong. He was clipping stragglers at dusk, I think that's
It wasn't. I also, as soon as you said it, I thought groundkeeper Willie, and then he's clipping stragglers. It just kind of went.
he means like it means in this case, because I know, because I wrote it and I just realised what I wrote.
Is it like weeds?
It's like the bits of the hedge that are growing out.
All right, okay, yes, because you don't want to get caught. You don't want to get your clothes caught on.
Exactly.
Yes, okay. He's clipping his stragglers.
He's clipping his stragglers at dusk.
Groundskeeper Willie. No, it wasn't Willie.
Have you ever clipped your stragglers at dusk? I
In a maze. Oh, oh no.
And then he saw it. A figure, tall as a man, but wrong, standing at a fork in the path. Its head was a smooth, featureless oval. No eyes, no mouth. Just a blank expression under a tattered hood. Tom yelled, hefting his shears, but it didn't flinch. It just slid sideways into the hedge, silent as oil, leaving a ripple on the leaves. It's like Homer Simpson backing into the hedge. Word spread, and soon visitors whispered of a watcher. A girl in a red coat saw it loom over her from the maze's heart, her screams bringing her father running, only to find empty paths. An old woman peering through her camera caught a blur of it melting into the green. Her film later showed a smudge where a face should have been. By December, it was a fixture. Always tall, always faceless, hovering at corners or peering from dead ends. Never moving, just watching. A paranormal trio from Leicester rigged tape recorders one night, capturing static that crackled in a low, garbled hum, like a voice, but with no throat. There was no actual words were detected, but it did show something. One of the investigators, called Tom, swore it wasn't human, but something else. He said it was stitched from the estate's buried walls and monkish ghosts. Probably a poetic license there, but that's what he said.
Does that mean it's a amalgamation of all the ghostly things in one? Is that what he's saying?
Yeah. It's like an entity that is born out of all the events that have happened there. Right. And now the maze grows shaggy, the watcher lingers in the shadows.
Shaggy? Sorry.
Silent, eyeless, a sentinel of nothing, waiting for those who stray too far. Now, I think that one probably is more likely to be, as we've just alluded to there, something which what is not the ghost of an individual person, but I think what happens maybe from that scientific evidence that we spoke about earlier, how it confuses you.
Yeah.
It's either people perceiving something that they wouldn't otherwise be able to perceive. So maybe it is a supernatural thing, or that story was built out of somebody misinterpreting something else. Then people piled in, and a bit like the creepypasta things, like the Slender Man.
Yeah.
People start seeing things that weren't there.
Well, it is a kind of faceless, blank faceless entity is incredibly scary. Quite like to dig into some of the psychology of that. Bit like Uncanny Valley. I know it's not an Uncanny Valley thing, but it's like what is it about a smooth, expressionless face that is so disturbing to us? Of course it looks weird, and I've got some ideas, but there must be some like research behind it psychologically.
Well, I think it's because you don't know what the entity driving that facial expression or lack of it is, what their intention is. Do you remember those robotic dancers of the 80s who would like wear a white sock over their face, sometimes with lights where the eyes are, and the expression obviously never changes? That's part of their thing. I found them terrifying. I remember going to an event once where there was like two of those robotic dancer people, and you know they're people, and you know there isn't really a robot there, but that, again, uncertainty and that blank expression, I found that absolutely terrifying.
Can't remember what they looked like, but I remember I went to a Gary Newman concert and there was a robot group. I think they were called Tick and Tock or something. Something like that. Anyway, I know what you mean. Well, there is something a bit Uncanny Valley about that, isn't there? That kind of humanoid robot thing. But yeah, the faceless thing. Yeah, I guess you can project whatever fears you want onto that. And the other thing is, I guess it means you can't You know, like humans are always looking for patterns and pareidolia and all that stuff. You can't do that with a blank face.
No,
can you?
no, you can't. If you're going to look at things like this, if you're sort of interested, one of the strangest things I've ever seen. There's an American talent show, and you'll find it. The guy performing on there, he calls himself 3D,
Right.
and he performs the song 19 by Paul Hardcastle.
I've seen that, yeah.
And he does the whole thing as if he were a robot, and he sort of mimes along because it's full of samples.
Yeah.
And he makes his eyes go just as a robot. And there's a point in this performance where he looks straight into the camera, and he looks like he is possessed or dead or a robot. And then at the end of it, there's a sigh of relief because he comes out of character and then walks across to the presenter. It's about a 2-minute clip. Look up on YouTube 3D 19 Paul Hardcastle.
Weirdly, I got served that up on YouTube the other week.
Did you?
Yeah, like literally last week. Yeah, that's odd. That's like coincidental. When he looks at into the camera, Ben, did it break your fourth wall?
It honestly, I don't understand how I don't know how he realised he wasn't being terrifying.
Yeah.
He wasn't, because he's not really a robot. He's more possessed.
Yeah.
If you know, did you watch it?
I watched about 30 seconds. I think I watched a preview. I don't think I clicked on it, but it's weird. As soon as you mentioned it, it was like, I got served that up last week. That's really odd.
It's probably because
It's very old though, right?
Oh yeah. It's the 80s, I think. Because Paul Hardcastle. I mean, it was obviously a current song.
Yeah.
So we're talking like 84, something like this.
I remember seeing a good, I think it was in Germany, in Berlin or something. So again, a robot performer doing something to craft work. But I like the intro. They basically, a guy lifts him in, carries him sideways onto the stage.
Yes, he's all stiff and they put him down like a robot.
Yeah,
yes,
that's really cool.
Yeah, again, I think I would find that too much.
Yeah.
I've got one more of these, and then I've got a brilliant case with loads of weirdness, and that is absolutely what's the word? Catalogued.
I feel you're pulling us deeper into the maze.
Well, this one is Mexico, and it's the Burning Hands. Ooh. Deep in the Yucatan's heat, Hacienda San Jose's agave maze once sprawled like a jagged crown, its spiky rose feeding the tequila stills.
So that's cactus, right?
Cactus, yeah.
Right, okay.
In 1897, a worker, Juan Morales, ran into the maze, fleeing a whip-cracking overseer after a spilled barrel. Oh. The air was thick with dust and sweat when his screams tore out, "Manos de fuego!" Hands of fire, and not, as I originally thought, something about a Renault. You remember the Renault Fuego? I didn't know that fire was Fuego. Yeah, anyway. He stumbled from the maze, shirt shredding, his arms blistering with burns, red, weeping marks shaped like grasping fingers curling around his wrists. He babbled of glowing hands rising from the earth, clawing at him as the agave swayed like a living cage, but no flames flickered, no smoke rose. The hacienda burned down in 1901, a blaze that spared the maze but charred its edges. Afterwards, villagers shunned it, claiming at night the agave glowed faintly, as if lit from below, and hands, pale and molten, wove through the spines, reaching for passers-by. Old Teresa, who'd fetched water nearby in the 1960s, swore she heard sobs, raw, choking ones, mingled into the stench of scorched flesh, and once saw a handprint sear into the dirt, smoking for hours. A hiker in 2020 snapped photos of the overgrown ruin, felt a hot gust rake his neck, his skin prickled as if brushed by embers, though the evening was cool and still. The maze is gone now, swallowed by the jungle, but the heat lingers, a memory of fire and rage, hands that grasp from the past too angry to fade. And again, we don't know why, we don't know the cause.
I got a theory.
Oh, go on.
So the guy who spilt the barrel of tequila,
Yeah.
he's got the other guy, you said whip hand, who's either going to get physically assaulted or at least fired.
Yes.
Runs into the maze. He's in a maze full of cactus, thought there's only one way out of this, just started throwing himself around and came out with this amazing story. You won't believe what I've been through in there.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He just threw himself into the cactus and just thought, I'll take my chances.
Yeah, don't go in there. There's fiery hands.
Yeah. I've been punished.
Yeah, the fiery hands got me.
Yeah.
Disembodied hands is obviously quite a big thing. We've got the hairy hands on, I think it's up in Dartmoor, which is quite famous. They took the controls of a motorcyclist and tried to make them crash. But there's also a case where they saved somebody by taking the hands.
Was that Ruth or the lawmen or both?
I think both. And actually, I heard the same tale recounted on an American podcast recently. Yeah, those hairy hands are famous.
I like that image, though, in that story of like a handprint being burnt into the ground. That's an interesting image, isn't it?
I like the fact as well that the witness. So who saw it? Teresa. Which one? Old Teresa. Oh, right, old Teresa, yeah.
Also, the idea of a cactus-based maze, that's really up in the game,
isn't it? Yeah.
Wow.
You can't climb over that.
Yeah, no snipping your whatever of that.
Well, let's go from those sort of enhanced tales of haunted or otherwise mazes. I want to talk about, now, I've asked the computer how I pronounce this. Hoiabashu is the best I can do. Hoiabashu Forest in Romania. I'm sorry if I've got that wrong. There's an accent in there that I just can't grasp with my Oxfordshire lilt.
The worst tropical drink ever. Sorry. Oxfordshire lilts.
Yeah, that is not the total
made of
tropical
apples,
taste.
Maybe some pears.
And a rhubarb stick.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's very funny, actually. What, the lilt's gone now, by the way?
That's it.
I think so.
I used to love lilt when I was young.
I did. Although my teachers, those were different times. You were allowed to take cans of drinking. And when we did home economics, they did this whole thing about how much sugar is in different drinks. Right. 13 teaspoons in lilt, which is more than Coca-Cola.
That's why we liked it so much.
I know. It was delicious.
Now, is it me, or was there a lilt flavour Calippo? Or do you remember the one that was like? So we're talking about ice lollies, really, was what they were called. There was one that was a triangle shape, a pyramid shape.
Oh yes, I remember this.
Was there a lilt one of those, or is that a Mandela effect thing I've got going on?
I don't remember that. I remember
maybe there was a tropical one.
I remember a black currant one. I don't recall the lilt one, but there's been so many drink to ice cream crossovers. Yeah,
like chocolate bars or ice cream crossovers. We're wandering about today like we're lost in a maze, aren't we?
Well, you could be in the Bermuda Triangle of Romania.
There we go. Well brought back.
It has a dense maze-like structure, this forest, and a heavy history of unexplained events. It first came to public attention in the 1960s as it was the site of loads of different UFO sightings, as well as ghost encounters and other anomalies. The other thing about it is that locals and tourists, they report nausea, dizziness, and the sensation of being watched. All of those things that we spoke about at the beginning that mazes can bring on.
But this is not a man-made maze. It's a natural forest maze?
It's a natural forest maze.
That's weird. Okay.
Possibly the most famous case about this is the Vanishing Shepherds, which happened in the 1950s. And literally a group of shepherds went in with a flock of about 200 sheep, never returned. Their abandoned belongings were found, but no trace of the shepherds or all the animals were ever discovered. There's been loads of people who've written accounts of this. I even came across a local a travel blog written locally by a visitor who had witnessed the account being told by a local who claimed to remember the event. Local folklore suggests there's a supernatural force at play. There is this legend that the forest can swallow people that disrespect it. And I'm not sure the shepherds were disrespecting it in any way. That's just what the folklore says. But it does appear to be grounded in some fact that some sheep and some people went and disappeared in the 1950s. It's probably most likely that they got lost, or there's another great, not legend, there's another great theory that perhaps they were rustling and they used the forest as a way of covering their tracks.
Thought you meant they were making too much noise.
Well, quite the opposite.
They were trying not to make any noise.
They took 200 sheep and stole them.
Right, okay. So they're getting them out of the way.
Getting them out of the way.
But there is... I like that idea of it being a kind of natural maze, though, because it's easy enough to get lost in a forest, let alone one that almost... nature has created its own maze structure to it. That's really weird. I remember going on a walk once, and it was towards the end of the day, and then realising we'd walked too far and try and get back to where we were parked, and like dusk was coming, and then it started getting dark, and it was a real moment of panic of like, I really thought we'd been really clear in the direction that we'd walked, and just got completely disorientated. Luckily, after like going around in circles for a couple of minutes, found a kind of landmark that we recognised, was like back on track. But there was at least 5 or 10 minutes of, I don't know which direction's which now, and I'm completely lost. It's terrifying.
It is, like forests, I think, are particularly disorientating because you start to think, well, I'll gauge where I am by remembering this tree. You suddenly realise that tree looks like that other tree.
Yeah.
And then you get to bits which you just can't pass through, and you're like, well, if I turn back, I'll only go back the way that I was lost. Yeah, I agree with you.
I think it got solved by a kind of pile of chopped down logs, because that makes sense.
That is why
I recognise that. Yeah, we're on the right track.
I'm always cautious about taking the dog for a walk in the forest without a tracker, because I think dogs will chase a bunch of deer.
Yeah, and then you're off and you've got no idea what direction you're in.
No, exactly. And then the dog eventually finds its way back to where you were, and you're vanished, The other thing about this forest is the UFOs. And in 1968, Emil Barnier captured what is considered one of Romania's most famous UFO images. It's a disc-shaped object hovering above the trees in the forest, and the photograph, which you can find by doing any Google search, it did get media attention around the world, and it brought UFO researchers to this particular place. So there's this idea that this portals idea comes through here, because of course a lot of people, if you read the newspaper at the time, obviously it's a great capture, but there's people going, oh well, there's probably a UFO base, or it's a gateway to another dimension, and all that
Skinwalker Ranch
that Skinwalker Ranch stuff comes up.
Well, I guess as well, if people are disappearing and animals are disappearing, that almost ties into all kinds of folklore about UFOs.
It does, and you're quite right that somebody, it was a Reddit thread I found, I didn't note it down, but I do remember somebody made the connection between UFO abductions and the missing shepherds and sheep.
Yeah.
There was a massacre joke. Space massacre. There is also a part of the forest which is brilliantly called the clearing of the fairies, where no vegetation grows, and it creates like this eerie barren patch amongst the dense trees, and visitors there, as you would imagine, report hearing whispers, feeling sudden cold spots, and seeing strange lights, mythical creatures. This area is also sometimes called the Devil's Cemetery, and is believed to concentrate the negative energy from the forest, and some say that it's like the centre of the forest labyrinth. When you look at a map, that doesn't appear to be absolutely true. This mirrors...
Although I did have a vision of the fairy folk waving their fists in the air at the UFOs, going, get away, this is our patch, we're here.
So I did find somebody, again on a Reddit thread, who had taken a photograph in this clearing of the fairies.
Of the fairy?
So they've taken a picture, so they are in there having a picnic.
Yeah.
And there's like the two people they're with.
Not in the Devil's Burial Ground. Do they not know their mythology?
On the outer reach of this clearing is, in just one frame of this photograph, is like a blue I was going to say flash, but it's not quite right. Like a blue blur,
Right.
which goes, as I say, it's there in one photograph, and then a photograph taken a second later, it isn't there. Right. I'm not sure that shows anything massively paranormal. They were trying to say that they weren't trying to say, they were saying that they had felt something weird that day. That's why they took the photograph. I tend to believe that perhaps it's probably just a photograph of an insect, a blue insect, flying past the lens, a butterfly.
Some light getting in the lens.
It's very, very unclear as to what it is. It does look like it's at the edge of the clearing. It doesn't look like a human shape. But it's interesting either way that it has garnered this reputation, and people go there to literally have a picnic in it and see what happens.
So we've got weird stuff in the woods. We've got shepherds and sheep disappearing. We've got UFO activity.
And we've got time anomalies.
Oh, okay. So we've got fairies and time anomalies. Okay.
Yeah. So people who visit the forest sometimes say their watches stop and even run backwards. And some emerge from the forest claiming that only minutes have passed when hours have elapsed. There's a 2020 blog post from a tourist. It recounts their entire group losing track of time, feeling disorientated, and later realising they'd been wandering for hours. So basically the nub of it is a group of them go in to explore. They think that they've been about an hour.
Yeah.
When they come out, they've been about 4.5 hours. No one is looking for them because they're just sort of independent adults going out there. But in the blog, they pointed out that they really didn't realise that amount of time had gone. It scared them. Their watches also didn't show that amount of time had gone. They only realise when they get back to the vehicle that they're in and realise that the clock in there doesn't match what they've got. And all of this, they didn't make the connection, but all of that sounds like fairy lore to me. I mean, I know it's also UFO lore, but fairies also have this habit of disorientating and taking time away.
I was actually retrofitting the rest of the tale with a time slip because it could explain the disappearance of the shepherds and the sheep in some way, because maybe they were from a different time.
Yeah.
And we talked when we did the episode last year on time slips of like weird aircraft sightings potentially being from the future rather than UFOs and involved in a time slip. So it would kind of make sense in some of the other activity that's around that place.
It would. It would, yeah. Well, this continues to this day. I did find a post on X from last month, February, from an account called Forest Freak. And it literally says, "I swear I walked in circles for hours. The trees literally moved." So people do still feel it. Again, I think that is that labyrinth effect. If you like, I've been to places like like the story you were just telling. I swear the trees moved. I think it's just disorientation. But if you get disorientated enough, you might end up at probably the pinnacle of the haunting of this, or the peculiarness of this forest, which is the haunted tree, and it's called the Tree of Whispers. And it's got these unusual reaching branches, and people report seeing apparitions near this tree and hearing mournful cries. It might be associated with nature spirits. That might be the reason for that, or it might just be that it is a particularly peculiar looking tree. But there is the Tree of Whispers in this wood. And or I would say forest. And I think that is quite pleasing because it sort of comes together and like adds all of these paranormal dimensions into this weird crisscrossy forest. And if you've got all of those legends, you're gonna see something, aren't you? Something's gonna happen.
Yeah. There's a lot going on there, isn't there? You're almost putting yourself in the mental place that you're gonna see something, aren't you? You're always going in with that because of the legends, if you know about them.
Yeah, that's right. And like, I do like this idea that when you get into the middle of one of these mazes or labyrinths, something is waiting there, something evil, something mysterious, something that is a a way to get somewhere else. You know, you're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah.
It's not exactly the same, but when I was talking about this to my partner whose family are builders in the Suffolk area, if you renovate an old house there, you will find elements of the house built to confuse witches. So, for example, a window put in at a peculiar angle in the top of a house, in the sort of the eaves, you get like very small windows. Sometimes those go in at a strange angle, and that's so witches get confused and can't come in through the top. So this idea of distorting, not necessarily reality, but making something appear confusing, can either keep evil out, or, as in the case of some of the things that we've heard about today, keep evil in. And it doesn't have the ability to, have the mental fortitude to work its way through the puzzle. And I think that is particularly pleasing.
It is pleasing, although it does make me think that rubbish builders have been getting away with that excuse for years, haven't they?
Let's keep the witches out.
We're keeping the witch out. That's why it's a bit skew-if. Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that. No, I don't think. Well, because
No.
well, the other thing you find there are boots, so that keeps witches out. Boots up in the boots built into the wall,
Right.
And unfortunately, cats.
Really? Ooh.
Yeah, there's where I can't remember where it is now. Isn't it? I think it's Halstead. There's a restaurant cum bar, and there's a mummified cat in the wall, and they've put a glass piece over it so you can see this cat, and that was put there to keep witches away.
But I'm assuming the cat was dead when it went in. No.
I'll leave that hanging.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. But that is basically a number of the stories. I've got one or two more which I will tell on the extra scoop, but it was a really great thing to investigate because it had never occurred to me that Labyrinths and Mazes could have so many paranormal tie-ins, and it's quite an exciting thing. And I'll go back on what I said earlier. I might actually go this Halloween and investigate one, and not investigate as in I'll find out what's in there, but I'll probably take a friend's young child and we'll go and have fun in there, and then I'll observe as to whether they start feeling things are a bit spookier, because I think in a young mind on a Halloween night, the veil is thin. Will it be any thinner in the middle of some corn?
But I love the non-paranormal stuff in this as well, that it can mess with your visual senses. The sound of the place can mess with you, let alone the anxiety of feeling trapped and lost.
I suppose the closest we feel like to that in our normal everyday lives is when you go somewhere unusual in the car and the roads keep going round and round. Like, remember when we drove to Shepton Mallet prison?
Yeah.
And those roads around Shepton Mallet, and even they didn't seem to make sense on our sat-nav.
Yeah.
And we were going round and round. And so you get to the point where you're like, we're so confused, we just need to stop, look at where we are and carry on. And people are just going to go, well, that's called being lost, Ben. Yeah, I get that. It is. But also, when you keep going round and round the same place and not being able to see where the map is telling you to go, you do get that disorientating effect, and you start thinking, how did I miss a road? How did I not see that? And then obviously you realise that you were reading the thing upside down. But I get a sense of where that is in there. And you also get this rising sense of panic, like when you're lost in the woods, that comes into the maze thing. Overall, probably just very confusing things.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Thank you.
And it's making me think about the thing I'm working on, which kind of follows up from an episode I did the other week. But it would suggest that if you did go into a maze and get lost, that was all pre-planned and you had no choice in it whatsoever.
Really?
Yes, I'll be investigating that. Consciousness and free will, I think, is what I'm working on.
Oh, very nice.
Because it came up when we were doing those, looking into those experiments where they predicted the future.
Yeah.
And it sparked me, and again, Ruthie put something as well, an article that backs up some of that. So yeah, there's a few other experiments I've found that I might be able to link together. But yes, we're gonna look at consciousness and free will and whether it exists at all.
So that might explain a little bit more about like fortune telling and those things. Oh, okay, great. Thank you for that. That's fascinating. So that's next week.
Hopefully, if I can put it together.
Okay, if not, probably just a guide to making tables or something.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can find us. Our home on the web is patreon.com/TQMpod, where you get free access to, well, you don't. You get access to these podcasts without any adverts in.
And a week early.
And a week early. You also get extra episodes. You also get the community. And you now get access to our Discord server, which I would very much say is a work in progress, but it is work and it is in progress. Go in there. Our admin in there is Steph. Have a lovely chat with her. We will start moving some content into there after we are creating it. It does take a while to get everything going, but it will be there. But everything on our Patreon site is there for you to enjoy. If you become a member, please sign up.
Yeah, come to patreon.com/TQMpod. If you do that now, I think, Ben, you've got a couple more maze and labyrinth stories which we're going to tell on Ben and Peter's Extra Scoop, the exclusive episode for patrons.
I do indeed.
Good. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you there. If we don't see you there, we will see you next week.
Have a lovely time. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Are you the quantum mechanics?